Do you ever stop to think about how different sex must have been in the medieval period? From monks supposedly dying from celibacy to priests resorting to dark magic to seduce women, the Middle Ages had a fascinating and often contradictory approach to sexuality. In the medieval times, the Catholic Church wielded immense power over sexual norms, while people's personal lives often strayed from official doctrines. Consequently, the dynamics of sex were marked by an ongoing struggle between religious regulations and human nature. Welcome to Bizarre History. Today we examine the kinky sex lives of the Middle Ages. The Catholic Church dominated life in medieval Europe, and sex was no exception. Viewing sex as solely for procreation, the Church condemned any sexual act done for pleasure as sinful. Enjoying sex even within marriage was seen as a highway to hell. Church leaders, most unmarried men, warned of the dangers of lust and temptation, especially from women. They believed sex was a necessary evil to produce children, but should not be relished. The Church forbade contraception and considered abortion a sin, though some scholars argue contraception was practiced covertly. While Jewish and Muslim cultures allowed some contraception within marriage, Christianity saw it as thwarting God's will. The Church taught large families were blessings, though population growth was limited by high infant mortality, long breastfeeding, and malnutrition reducing fertility. The Church also strictly forbid any non-procreative sex acts like masturbation, oral or anal sex. A religious text warned, "Whoever ejaculates seed into the mouth, that is the worst evil." Homosexuality was seen as a sin punishable by death. Virginity was prized even within marriage, as some believed women could regain spiritual virginity through penance if they lost physical virginity. The Church and other faiths were intensely concerned with controlling women's sexuality and preventing interfaith relationships. Marriage was only between people of the same religion. Christians, like Jews alike, blamed women for temptation while seeking to restrict them to their own faith. Jewish and Christian leaders feared their women being appropriated by Muslim or Jewish men. Prostitutes were even tasked with enforcing these religious boundaries. When the Church required Jews to wear badges in 1215, it was normally to prevent Jewish men from having sex with Christian women without the women realizing their religion. There were also strict rules around when people could have sex. No sex was allowed on Sundays, saints' days, or long periods like Lent, Advent, or Pentecost, which could last 40 to 60 days. Some even banned sex on Thursdays and Fridays as preparation for communion. These rules applied to married and unmarried people alike. The only approved sexual position was the missionary position, with the man on top and the woman below during intercourse. Even this was permitted solely for the purpose of procreation within marriage. The Church graded sexual positions according to their perceived level of sinfulness and depravity. More adventurous positions like doggy style were condemned as brazenly sinful, believed to be inducements to greater licentiousness and impropriety. Engaging in such acts was thought to condemn one's immortal soul to the torments of hell. Sex was treated as a lamentable necessity for producing offspring, but deriving pleasure from the act was seen as shameful. This restrictive mindset essentially pathologized human sexuality. Natural urges and enjoyment of intimacy between partners were classified as morally corrupting. The only justification for sex was clinical reproduction. The idea that married couples could explore sensuality and express affection through their bodies was completely taboo. Women in medieval period frequently used hardened bread loaves as makeshift dildos for masturbation and lesbian sex. Though the Church condemned all non-procreative sexual acts as sinful, women found ways to pursue sexual pleasure discreetly. Bread's phallic shape, when baked into an elongated loaf, made it a convenient sex toy that was cheap and already present in most homes. While wooden dildos existed, they were expensive novelties for the elite. Humble bread allowed average women to fashion temporary stimulators from an everyday food staple. Description of leatherworks being commissioned to make leather harnesses with elaborate dildo attachments hint such toys were used between women in lesbian relationships. This aligns with records from church confessions. Around 1000 CE, Burchard of Worms wrote guidelines for priests taking confessions that included asking women if they made some sort of device or implement in the shape of the male member and fornicated with other women. Though condemned by the Church, women's use of makeshift dildos illustrates medieval society's more nuanced, practical views on sexuality. Rigid doctrine did not always sync with lived experiences. Within their communities, sexual pleasure was not always seen as taboo, despite church prohibitions. Bread's accessibility allowed women to discreetly indulge in a small comfort of self-pleasure amidst arduous medieval life. In medieval period, sex work and prostitution were seen as a necessary part of society. The Church taught that sex could only occur within marriage for procreative purposes. However, it was believed that men would resort to violence or other sins if they did not have an outlet for their sexual desires. As masturbation was viewed as sinful, it was considered better for men to pay for sex with prostitutes than to engage in solitary vice. Sex work was legal and regulated in many parts of medieval Europe. In London, prostitutes were known as the Winchester geese because they were licensed by the Bishop of Winchester to operate brothels in the Southwark area. The Church condoned such institutions as a necessary evil to prevent greater sins. St. Thomas Aquinas even compared brothels to sewers, unpleasant but vital for maintaining order. While accepted as needed, sex workers were still looked down upon. Brothels were confined to areas outside city walls where upstanding citizens would not have to mingle with them. Prostitutes sometimes had to wear identifying garments, such as striped hoods. However, there was a path to redemption. Women who wished to leave the profession could confess to a priest, perform penance, and marry to rejoin mainstream society. Some convents even took in reformed sex workers. Those who remained sex workers until death faced final condemnation. As they were considered sinners, they could not be buried in consecrated ground. In London, many prostitutes were laid to rest in Crossbones graveyard. While not accepted in life or death, sex workers played an essential role in medieval culture and conceptions of morality and order. Their ambiguous status reveals the complex attitudes of the era. In the medieval era, erectile dysfunction carried severe implications. A man facing impotence would find himself in dire circumstances. The Church, recognizing the importance of procreation, would dispatch its most esteemed medical experts to conduct thorough examinations of his genitals. If the dysfunction was deemed permanent, the consequences were profound. A man's marriage would be dissolved and his prospects for future sexual intercourse would be forfeited. The Church held the belief that sex served solely for the purpose of procreation, leaving no room for a man incapable of fathering children within the bonds of matrimony. Consequently, annulments due to erectile dysfunction were distressingly commonplace, often resulting in profound humiliation for all parties involved. The weight of such a diagnosis was immense, as it not only impacted a man's personal life but also cast doubt on his societal standing and sense of worth. The repercussions of erectile dysfunction in medieval society were far-reaching and served as a stark reminder of the Church's strict view on the purpose of sexual relations. While the Church strongly opposed contraception, some manner of condoms existed to prevent sexually transmitted diseases. However, these early condoms bore little resemblance to modern varieties. Many were fashioned from animal parts like bladders and intestines, while others relied on linen cloth. Moreover, they were washed and reused repeatedly, a practice considered unhygienic by today's standards. Although not as effective as modern latex condoms, these predecessors provided some protection against disease. Their existence points to an underground effort to promote public health amidst religious prohibitions. Prevailing medical theories held that both male and female orgasms were necessary for conception to occur. Doctors advised married couples looking to conceive to time their climaxes as closely together as possible. These beliefs stemmed from a limited understanding of human anatomy and reproductive biology. To aid in synchronized orgasms, medieval medical texts offered advice for enhancing sexual pleasure. Men were encouraged to apply irritants like chewed pepper to the penis to heighten sensation. Women's sexual pleasure was little understood, though doctors recognized the importance of foreplay in preparing for conception. Myths abound about foods and positions that could influence factors like a child's sex or health. Wine with animal testicles was believed to help couples conceive boys. Lengthy intercourse with a man on top was thought to prevent birth defects. Even the weather was said to impact seed quality. Sex during storms was warned against. Tales were told of women birthing toads after having relations in bad weather. In the superstitious world of the Middle Ages, belief in magic and spells was widespread across all levels of society. A particularly intriguing aspect was the use of so-called love potions, concoctions of herbs, animal parts, and even bodily fluids thought to have the power to induce romantic desire or sexual attraction when consumed secretly by the intended target. According to the 13th century theologian William of Montibus, some women were said to resort to shocking measures, using substances like fish which had died in her vagina, or bread which was made on her buttocks with blood or menstrual blood, in potions fed to their husbands purportedly to inflame their love and lust. One vivid documented example is the case of the 15th century Venetian nobleman Domenico Contarini, who fell madly in love with a poor Greek woman named Gratiosa. Rumor had it that Gratiosa won his devotion through a love potion combining rooster's heart, wine, water, and her own menstrual blood. This concoction was said to be mixed with additional blood, cooked into a powder, and secretly administered to Contarini, inducing an obsessive passion. The use of love potions captures the imagination, but also illustrate the lack of understanding around human emotions and relationships compared to modern times. Still, the basic desire to be loved remains a universal and timeless facet of human experience. If you want more of history's kinky side, hit like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. From us at Bizarre History, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.